Okay, so now that I've gotten all the definitions out of the way, we're going to move on to how they apply, how gaming applies to my writing life. I'm going to give you a little personal history here because as I've played games, the impressions I've gotten from those games have changed what I expect from them and uh, what I think a good game should be and how it would have to be written. So the first game I ever worked, or the first gaming console system I ever used, was the Nintendo. Um, and the first game I remember playing was Super Mario Brothers. This is a very, very classic linear game. Almost everybody who's played the Nintendo knows this game. Um, the player is the hero in the game. You play the main character. He's really the only character that major character that you can interact with is the main character. There's also a dragon and a princess at the end of every level. And if I'm not mistaken, there were something like 8 levels in the game. Um, I never actually beat it, so I wouldn't know. This is the most basic, simple programming. People loved it because it was something entirely new, um, in a way of as a way of entertainment. But it doesn't take a lot of brain power to beat Super Mario Brothers. You just have to be able to move your fingers fast enough, and sooner or later you'll win. Um, there were a very few simplistic puzzles as to how your character interfaced with the world. Um, and anymore, this is mostly played as memorabilia. It's where we began. It's not necessarily um, considered the height of games or the direction we want to go move in. And when I say we, I mean this was one of the first game systems that was widely published for and used by a lot of different gamers. So I mean we as a culture, not just myself. The next big game that I really got into that changed the way I thought about gaming was King's Quest VI. It was the first game I ever played on a computer. And this was a puzzle game. It was a very, very good puzzle game. And I remember it stumped me and my father for months. There were just points in the game we couldn't get past. Um, it was a good time. And all of it was based on your brain power and thinking differently within the game. So, and based on how many puzzles you solved and in what order, depended on the ending of the game. So this was one of the first games that I ever saw that had a multiple ending option. Actually, it had several different endings. And part of the fun of it was playing it over and over again to get as many endings as possible just to see what changed. There there was also a new advent in the entire genre of gaming with the advent of these puzzle games in King's Quest. This was the first game I ever remember being able to buy a hint book for. So there's an entirely new genre of writing that goes with it. You write a game that's unplayable and frustrates the heck out of people, and then you write the cute little book that everybody has to buy in order to beat the game. Okay, the next event in my personal gaming history of significance came, I would say, 4 or 5 years after King's Quest VI, and that was Final Fantasy VII. Not that I didn't play games in the meantime, but this was the next big thing that really changed what I thought a game could do and what they could be. This was the first Final Fantasy VII was for the PlayStation 1. This was the first console game I played since I played on my Nintendo, which had broken many years prior. Final Fantasy VII was a role playing game. It had a linear storyline. You couldn't change the story, you had to kind of just go through the motions. But the characters all had their own personality, including the player character, the one that you interacted with most. Um, and there were multiple player characters, I should clarify that. They were their own people, they were entertaining, they were inspiring. A lot of different things happened to them, and that not only got lots of people playing, this got it meant that anybody who had played this game could immediately talk to you about Cloud Strife and you'd know who he was talking about and what had happened in the game to this character and why he thought Cloud Strife was interesting. Automatically, you had a fan base and a connection with people who played games. So it sort of filled you out. You weren't just sitting in a room somewhere playing finger jockey with Mario. You were talking with friends that had played the same game as you and had it the storyline was intriguing enough that you weren't just talking about how you beat the game. You were talking about what the characters did and why it moved you. The other thing I should say is that Final Fantasy VII, while it did have a linear story, it had a lot of silly nonsense quests and fluff that kind of filled out the main story. So when you got tired of trying to go kill Sephiroth and you were getting your butt kicked, you could go and try to raise a golden chocobo for the sole purpose of raising a golden chocobo. There were neat little things you can unlock if you managed to do it that would help you beat the end of the game, but you didn't have to do it. It was just sort of for the fun of it. So what this game really did bring was a sense of community for me. The idea there are other people playing this and there's something more to it when you talk to them than just the the way you play the game, and how interesting and in depth a gaming storyline could be. A couple more new and interesting possibilities that occurred to me as I went through my gaming years. Um, The Sims and Morrowind. Morrowind was groundbreaking. It was a very big RPG that the world of the game was the focus of the story. It wasn't the plot that drove you. It was the idea that there was this monstrous world. This was for the PC, by the way, that you could do almost anything in this world that you could do in real life. You could talk to people and they actually talked back. It wasn't text on a screen. You talked to them and they made noise back at you. Um, and you could choose what you said. You couldn't actually create your own words, but there were multiple choices of, I guess I will have to say words that could be said to these people. Um, you could pick herbs, you could walk around on trails, and it wasn't like there were signs that said, no, I'm sorry, you can't go this way. You had to climb mountains, and you were actually jumping around on rocks trying to climb them, and there were places where you couldn't climb them. Uh, it's the kind of game that you really have to play to understand how open-ended that world was and how open-ended the story was, because you didn't have to play the main plot line. You could play for hours and hours. You could play 300 hours of this game and never actually do anything that your character was supposed to do to get to the end of the game. And you would be entertained and you would still be doing quests and you would be having a good time and leveling up and doing all the things you were supposed to do. Um, the only thing that Morrowind really didn't have was it wasn't multiple player. It wasn't an MMORPG. You couldn't get all your friends together and go have an online gaming session and all play the same quests together. But your character was customizable, and yeah, the plot was really, really good. It was worth playing the actual plot to play the actual plot. But the idea that you were kind of your own hero, that you made your way in this world, that was really, really cool. Um, then there were The Sims. And The Sims I only mention, it's a totally different genre than anything we've talked about so far. It's a simulation strategy game. But the thing that The Sims did is that they took an idea like, let's make normal everyday life into a game. You can control little people walking around in the world and get them little people jobs and feed them food and make them take showers, and you wouldn't think this would be entertaining, but it's really, really addictive. So just the idea that breaking out of the box and considering, what human nature might find amusing, even if it doesn't sound amusing. I think we're all control freaks to a certain extent, and The Sims definitely takes advantage of that. So entertainment in unexpected ways and unexpected forms.